Hello, my name is Andrew Costello from the Disability Service here in Trinity College Dublin. I'm the Assistant Technology Officer for the service, helping students to interact and use technology in their academic work, essentially trying to make a task that you might find difficult to make it a bit more easier, essentially using technology, which is obviously an independent resource that you can use when you wish, how you like it, without the need for any other person, essentially all the way through. Today we're going to focus on a tool called Text Help Read and Write for Google Chrome. So for some people who've viewed past masterclasses who would have spoken on Read and Write for desktop, today Google Chrome do have a Read and Write plugin essentially all the way through, and we're going to speak about how to install it, its functionality, and the difference essentially between both all the way through. I'm also joined here today by the AT intern, Jamie McKendry. So if you have any questions essentially on the way, you can stick them into the chat, or if you wish, you can mail into askds@tcd.ie. That's askds@tcd.ie, and I'll show you that at the end, essentially all the way through, if you're looking for some support around this area. So what is Read and Write for Google Chrome? All the way through. So I'm going to open up a browser here, essentially all the way through. And essentially, for me to install it, the first thing I need to do is open up Google essentially and just do a search, Text Help for Chrome. Okay, all the way through, you'll see the first option here that comes up on the search area is Read and Write for Google Chrome. By clicking on that, essentially, it will bring you to the site to allow you to install it onto your add-ins essentially all the way through. And Read and Write have extensive stuff there for you to have a look at essentially if you wish. So down below here, Read and Write for Google Chrome, and you'll see an overview of it, and you'll be able to install it essentially all the way through, and it gives you a small review of what it does and people's past history on it essentially all the way through. So essentially, again, just to read through that again, go to your Google search bar or any search bar that you use, a search engine, hit Text Help for Chrome. And the first option down here, down below, Read and Write for Chrome. You'll know it because it has chrome.google.com essentially against it all the way through. And by clicking on it, brings you to the web page, and you'll be able to install it. Now, I've already have it installed, hence why it's saying to me remove from Chrome. But if you haven't had it installed previously, it will ask you to install it. The one caveat here is that you need to be signed into your browser as under your Trinity details. So in the case here, Jamie has provided essentially logged in under his Trinity details essentially all the way through. Okay, that scenario all the way through. So it's important if you're using your own Google account or personal Gmail account, the Read and Write extension won't switch on essentially all the way through. You'll have to use your Trinity account essentially, or log into your Google account as yourself. And you can do that obviously by signing in or adding in a profile down here to add yourself in essentially all the way through. From there, then once you install the extension, it sits up here under your extensions, all your extensions that you have. Hitting on this jigsaw piece will give you a list of all the ones that you have installed previously. So I've got 3. All to do with Read and Write. Read and Write for Google Chrome, the screenshot reader, which will also prompt you to install it, and the support for the desktop version essentially of Read and Write all the way through. Okay, so the two that we're trying to install here today is Read and Write for Google Chrome. Once that's installed, you'll see it appear up here in your list as you work your way through. Okay, so what does it do? Why is it so great essentially all the way through? Essentially, it's Text Help for web. So if you're interacting with the web quite a lot, Blackboard, web articles, all that type of side of stuff, Read and Write for Google Chrome just makes that a bit more easier essentially all the way through. You don't have to open up another program, which you would do with the desktop version. It will run directly from the browser essentially all the way through. It's built for your use within a web browser a bit more essentially, and makes a use. As you can see, it's quite extensively used. Quite a lot of people using it across the way, across different educational environments all the way through. So a common thing that you might be asked to do is to pick up a document essentially all the way through. I've searched the library tools here for assistive technology. I've come across an article I want to open on. I've clicked on the link. It's brought me to the page essentially all the way through, and you can see this is what I wanted to read. And by clicking on our friend here up here that I've just installed for Google Chrome, it will launch our friend and the extension, okay, which you can move around anywhere on the screen all the way through. I'm going to plump it up on top. I'm kind of used to things having it on the top, but you can plump it anywhere you wish on the screen for you and to move. So it has, for people familiar with Text Help Read and Write, the desktop version, similar functionality essentially all the way through, that kind of sort of stuff. It's really a tool essentially to have stuff read back to you, to allow you process that information a bit quicker by having an auditory feedback a lot more all the way through. So by listening to stuff to make sure that you understand it, essentially, or proofing your own work. In this case, we're also using online versions, so you might be doing a lot of research of your own work, or some articles you've been asked to read, websites, PDFs, online PDFs, those type of things, essentially all the way through. And this tool will help you interact with that, or maybe again help you process that a lot more easier, essentially all the way through. And I'll run through a lot of these features here, and the main ones that I think that will be useful for you to use as you wish. So here we have an example of our friend, essentially, that I want to have read, essentially all the way through, and I might want to have that read to me. Okay, so you might think, well, straight away I'm going to go up here and have it read. Okay, and hit the play button, essentially all the way through, and nothing happens. Okay, why is that happening? Why is that having an issue essentially all the way through? It's because the tool cannot see the text essentially all the way through. It's not making out the text as you would if you highlighted basically in a Word document. And in this case here, we would use the screenshot reader to essentially click on it and draw a box around where I want it to be read. The tool goes off and then analyzing it essentially all the way through. It's still working away then and below. It takes a few seconds for it to have a look at the text. It's like a mini scanner to a certain degree, essentially all the way through. And at the very end, once it's complete, it will give you an option to play this back, which we'll run here in a second when it's finishing its stuff. So, if you have a large document or a page, expect to wait 30, 40 seconds essentially for it to process itself through. And once it's complete, it will give you the option to play back. To end. There we go. So it's now playing this back to me. I'm hearing an auditory feed. I can pause it, I can stop it, I can keep playing with it essentially all the way through. I can go up and even change the settings if I wanted to move away from the voice essentially that I'm using essentially all the way through. I can change the voice to a different type of user essentially, or a different type of stuff. So I'm just going to come out of here. Go to our friend settings. I have a whole range of voices I can choose from essentially all the way through. A lot more than you would of the desktop version essentially all the way through. So a lot of people prefer different types of voices, and you can have it changed, and you can change the pitch and speed and all that kind of scenario as you wish on it all the way through. Okay, so that's what like things that are scanned, the thing that you can't find when you highlight it and you hit play. It doesn't do anything because it can't see any text there. We use the screenshot reader essentially to do that. Similar to the desktop version for guys who are when you come across PDFs that you can't see or can't highlight, they use the screenshot reader to highlight the text you wish and have it read back essentially all the way through. Okay, really probably the main functionality within Read and Write all the way through. If I go to another website, I'll just go to something a bit more generic, like our friend in RTE all the way through, and open up an article essentially all the way through. And again, launch our friend, the screenshot reader. Yep. And highlight text there, hit play. It will read that back for me. I was able to make out the website. And websites, any kind of website you will click on, it will be able to play directly from the browser. So again, I can listen back to my document essentially all the way through using the play, stop, and pause for any websites. This for stuff that you really can't highlight or you find difficulty when that's scanned in and then essentially all the way through. The one that I skipped over, okay, hover, speech, I can click on that. And as I hover my mouse, it will automatically start playing it back for me. So I don't have to hit play or stop pause essentially all the way through. It'll do for me automatically. You know, some people don't have that because they want to be obviously playing around with the screen essentially all the way through, that kind of sort of stuff. There's a dictionary beside it. So again, if I wasn't sure what a word meant, I could highlight it and it would give me what that is. I can have that played to me as well if I wish to me, what that means essentially all the way through. That way through. So it tells me what the, you know, gives me a definition. And beside it, obviously the picture dictionary, very similar, it give you a picture that will correspond with that essentially all the way through. Gives you what that is essentially all the way through. The really kind of useful tools. Prediction tool is as I start typing into a document, or not now, I'll move back to that. It's similar to what your mobile phone do with prediction text. It will play it back to you essentially. It will try to make a prediction of what you're saying, or what you're attempting to type, and fill in the gap essentially for you and to quicken you up. So just moving along through the toolbar. So we've talked about the hover switch, dictionaries, the play back and pause of websites, the screenshot ones that you find difficult to read or that's not playing back directly, like PDFs. An audio function beside it, so you can create an audio version. So again, if I wanted something, if I don't want to be standing in front of my computer all day, I might want to get the text, and it will create an audio version of what I've just highlighted, and allow you then to download it as an MP3, so you can listen to it on the go in your own time essentially. A lot of people, again, why do I need that? It's just somebody you might find listening to work or listening to text as an easier way to process that information essentially all the way through, a quicker way to understand what's being taught, or even for you to over time, for exams, for example, you might have certain text that you've covered or notes that you put in place all the way through. You might want to listen to them back as you're walking around. It might seep into the brain essentially and process that essentially all the way through. That's the audio function. The fact mapper essentially just a web search tool. Again, I can click on it and it'll go off and do a web search for me on what that is. It's essentially a shortcut into Google essentially as you work your way through that kind of sort of stuff. So that's that one. Beside it is our friend the screen masking tool. So again, the screen masking tool, by clicking on it, puts over this overlay. So people sometimes will like overlays. Okay, so it make it easier on the screen for me to see the screen essentially all the way through. I can change the settings within there if I wish. I can go into here and again change the I should go out of the settings of it into screen masking. Change the background if I wish to a more yellow color all the way through. I can change how strong it is or how bright it is essentially all the way through. So when I click on it, it puts over that screen for me and easier for me to see. So it's down to preference. A lot of people have different preferences regarding obviously all the way through, and you can play around with it to wish you wish, but essentially mimics what we call an overlay for people who find glare, white on black difficult to read essentially all the way through. Beside that is talk and type essentially all the way through, so I can use that to essentially use my voice to dictate to the tool. If I'm using like online versions of Word or Tech or even something like Notepad, for example, if we open up here, I can use this to talk into it essentially all the way through, where it will take my input essentially all the way through. So I don't have to set it up directly for this, so work directly, but essentially will mimic dictation that you have within Microsoft Word. The tool beside it is a translator, essentially all the way through. As I said, I can translate this into different languages. I can whatever language I wish to change it into. I can have my text change into my native language. So if you're an international student or prefer to interact in a foreign language, or looking at something within a foreign language, I'm going to change back to English. This tool will nicely do a quick change for you or a translation for you into text. The last few along the lines here, I something that I really would use quite a bit, or I have done previously. So if I'm listening to my document, okay, if I'm having something read to me, okay, that I want to read and it's been talking to me. Okay, so I'm listening away. I go with that. I want to highlight that. I can use this as a highlighting tool. essentially all the way through. And you can use colors for different types of themes, essentially all the way through, and that will. So again, I might want to change this into something that's negative or positive, for example, all the way through, and put that into a thing, and so on, as we're working way through the document, not highlighting every word or sentence, but things that you felt were important. All the way through. I can use the different colors obviously to align it. I can clear them off if I don't want to have any highlights, but I can also collect the highlights. So from an online document tool I'm using, I can click it. I want to collect all my colors essentially all the way through. It will open up into a Google Docs form for me essentially all the way, once I allow it essentially all the way through. And it will give me my fix here, and it'll give me all the stuff that I've highlighted from the document. So as I'm working through the document and listening stuff, I'm nicely summarizing the word or the stuff that I felt that was important, as you might do if you were working with a physical document and highlighting stuff using the stuff as you're working your way through. You're working your way through. Just save it's a ink-free version of that essentially all the way through. Vocabulary list, not something that I would come across and use much within in third level, but it will collect all the verbs essentially all the way through from the colors that I've highlighted and tell me what they are, essentially all the way through. And also simplify the page. If I'm working on a website, it will take away all the background scenario and put it into a nice plain text version essentially all the way through, which I can change to all different types of colors at the top. I can increase it and simplify it further, or make it a bit more easier, or bring back in some formatting as you work your way through. I can change the font if I wish, all different types of font that I can have that document changed to. So a nice way to simplify what I've been asked to read essentially all the way through, and that kind of sort of stuff. So let's bring back to my friend. So that's the simplify tool here on the right. The reading, practice reading aloud is just a tool that will allow you, it's as you speak into it, it will allow you to practice essentially your own voice. So it may be something along the lines regarding something that you might have to present on essentially all the way through, give you some feedback on it, or how am I presenting essentially all the way through. It'll allow you to time yourself and give you some feedback on, or allow you some auditory feedback yourself by listening back to your own voice essentially as you work your way through it. They are the main tools, okay, within it. As someone said, it's like a Swiss Army knife of tools that you can use essentially. The difference, as I said at the start, is really it's built for the online world. The Chrome extension essentially, so you can easily switch it on and off by just clicking on the button essentially all the way through. It'll bring back on it, and it allows you to interact better, I suppose, with websites, online content, stuff that's within the VLE, saying you have to download it essentially all the way through. If you're using your online versions of Word or PowerPoint, it will also work within those kind of environments a lot better all the way through. It's free for you to download, no cost essentially. Once you're logged in using your college username and password essentially into your Chrome browser, like we have done here with Jamie's details essentially all the way through, it will work for you seamlessly. Obviously, if you run into problems, have issues, or would like to meet with myself or Jamie to discuss it a bit further, you can do by just mailing us into askds@tcd.ie essentially all the way through, askds@tcd.ie essentially all the way through. Or you can also make the phone call here as well, and I'd be able then to come in and meet with you and discuss any issues that you might have regarding the use of Read and Write Chrome, or any other assistive technology tools that we've put together. Just to kind of give a recap, we have obviously this is our fifth or sixth scenario or stuff that we have covered under the area that from our homepage here, and under student sports, into technology, assistive technology. We have put together a list of all the classes that we've covered to date, all the way through. So today I said I'm covering textile Read and Write, and a version of this recording will be posted to this website at a later date. And previous recordings of all the stuff we've done here have all linked up here for you to review on essentially all the way through. So next week I'll be covering OneNote, and get a note-taking tool from Microsoft. and so on and so on as we get into more exam prep near the end of term. So just to reflect, if you have any questions at all, you can mail us back into askds@tcd.ie. Thank you very much for your time. Take care now. Bye-bye.